being here today, and we have a really special guest today speaking. We have Eric Pelkey, and he's the Hereditary Chief of the Tsawout First Nation and the Community Engagement Coordinator of the W SÁNEĆ Leadership Council. Eric, I'm so sorry, my accent will kill everything, so I apologize for how I will mention stuff. He has worked in First Nation administrations for over 25 years, and he has had an incredible array of roles. He has been a band manager, a chief executive officer, a land manager, and a coordinator for the SENÇOFEN Alliance, and I killed that, I'm sorry. He has a degrees in Indigenous Language Revitalization from UVic, and we are really, really grateful to have you here today. Thank you for coming, and we will now let you speak. And if you want to specify some wording that I really killed, please go ahead. I will not be offended. I would be grateful to be corrected.
Well, I guess first off, I want to start off with a prayer that the way that we always start off with our gatherings, because the Saanich people are very spiritual people, and so that's always the proper way we feel to start things off. So I'll start off. I'd like to thank the Creator for bringing us this beautiful day. Ask the Creator to lay a blessing on all of our communities and all our friends and families. Help guide them through these troubled times. Ask the Creator to lay a special blessing on our elders and our children, and help lay a special layer of protection onto them. Ask the Creator to help us lead us through the work that we need to do for our people. My traditional name is Kuchkeenum. I am the Hereditary Chief of the Tsawout village of the Saanich Nation. We have four villages on the peninsula here, Tsawout, Sartap, Pocatrin, and SENÇOFEN, that are the existing villages, although there were many villages around the peninsula that were taken away from us, and a lot of the villages were decimated by the various diseases that struck our people. So I guess I wanted to start off by talking about where you're at, because I want to welcome you to the Saanich Nation. Even though you might not be here physically, you're here spiritually, and coming here to learn and hopefully work within our territory. So I'd like to welcome you all. I learned, well, I guess I grew up with the story of the flood, as part of our creation story, and it was confirmed, I guess, archaeologically through an acquaintance of mine that worked with Stantec. So around 1995, I was called out to Salt Spring Island, which we know as Saanich. Saanich means looking towards Saanich. That's the name of that place, Saanich. And we have no permanent residence on Saanich, because there is no access to water out there any longer because our reserve was cut off from the water source when the reserve was created. So all of our people were moved here to Tsawout that used to live out there in Salt Spring. But it is known as one of our oldest villages there, and stretched all the way down to around Fulford Harbor. Some of our friends that we have out in Salt Spring walk the reserve that we have there, and pretty regularly. And when they find people camping illegally or taking resources off the reserve, or they spot something that might be troublesome to us, they phone us and let us know what's going on there. So in 1995, I was the band manager of Tsawout, and I got a call from one of our friends out there telling us that there were remains on the beach in front of our old village. There was remains on the beach that had happened as a result of erosion from the ocean. They called us to come out there and to do something about it, and before the tide washes it away. So I took 4 of our spiritual elders here, and 2 of our young men that deal with the remains of our people. And I guess I should point out that there are only certain families that are allowed to handle remains of our ancestors, and it is passed down from father to son to grandson. So these people are the only ones that are permitted by our people to handle remains. So we brought 2 of them out with us, with the 4 spiritual elders, and asked an archaeologist from Stantec to join us to have a look at the possible age of the remains. So the archaeologist George came out there, and we found the remains pretty quickly on the beach, and left the archaeologist to do her work. And the only thing that she asked us to do was to bring a light colored blanket, and that we brought with us, and she laid it on the beach, and then started looking for the remains, and making sure that she got all of them. And what she did was she constructed the skeleton of the person. From all the remains, she constructed a full skeleton of a man, and by the shape of the skull as a result of cultural shaping, she could tell that this was what they are in the olden days used to call a flathead person. It's a person that when they were a child and they were of a highborn lineage, a board was tied to their head to shape the front of their head, and so when they became a man, their forehead appeared to be flat, and so that she said that this was occurring probably about 5,000 years ago, and she constructed it and showed us that there was just one person, and that was a full. She found all of the bones, and constructed the skeleton so that it was all there, and nothing was missing. And so she found various artifacts with it, that an axe head and a spear head, an arrowhead, and a lot of bead type implements that he must have had a beaded thing around his neck. So she found all those things, and all the beads appeared to be made of bone of some kind, she said. So that's why they lasted as long as they did. But in the end, finding that it was a full skeleton of a person, our spiritual elders and the young men that handled the remains gathered up the remains, and we brought it up the bank, up the hill from the beach, and reburied the individual, and the spiritual elders did a special prayer for them. They were not definitely sure which family it could come from. So they just blessed it as one of our people. All of the artifacts that were found on the beach were buried with him because they felt that they were his artifacts. After the burial, the elders told us that they had to go pick a special medicine and mix the medicine with water, and when they came back, they were going to use that to cleanse us all of the people that were present, to make sure that we didn't take anything away from what happened that day, and we didn't carry it with us back to our families. So I said, oh, well, I'll wait here for you to come back, and I sat down on the log, and the archaeologist said she would wait with me. So while the others were gone searching for the medicines, the archaeologist asked me, are you aware of a gigantic flood that happened in this area about 10,000 years ago? She said, in all of my archaeological work around Gulf Islands and the San Juan, and even over into the mainland, I keep finding evidence of a flood, and all of the evidence that I've found all points towards a time of about 10,000 years ago. She said that this great flood happened, and it happened everywhere around here. So I told her we grew up with that knowledge that there was a great flood here, and we were always told that it was around 10,000 years ago to 12,000 years that this flood happened. So then I told her what I'm going to tell you now about the Great Flood, because she said, how can I have grown up here in Saanich? She said, gone to high school here in Claremont, gone to university at UVic, and before I went on to Simon Fraser. She said, how did I go through all the years of my education without ever hearing this? I said, that's because our history is hidden, and hidden from the general public, because people don't want to acknowledge that we're still here, that we are the rightful owners of the land here. We are the original people. So about 10,000 years ago, our people living here on the Saanich Peninsula, on the Gulf Islands, and they were going about their everyday work. Charles, the creator, came down to our people here in Saanich, called them together and told them that they must prepare for a great flood that's coming. He said, you must make great canoes, enough canoes to hold your people and the things that they need to live for many, many days. He said, you must find the tallest trees, the biggest trees to make these canoes. They must be able to withstand a lot of force. And you must take the cedar bark and make great ropes, hundreds of feet long, and take them with you in those canoes when the floods come. And he said that you all must be prepared. But you know, in those days, just these days, there are people that believe what the Creator says, and those that scoff at what's brought to the messages that are brought to them, thinking that these things can't happen. But the day did come after they'd made all their preparations. And of course, some of the people were on the sidelines just making fun of them, building their canoes and making their preparations. But when the rain started coming in real force, and the thunder and lightning storms started coming, and the people, the water started rising, and the people realized that the flood was coming. So the people that prepared did start to put their things into their canoes and make their preparations, and so they got themselves, the families that got themselves ready, got into their canoes and brought all their belongings that they needed with them, and went into their canoes and started paddling out. And the water around us continued to rise all around us. And the last thing that they could see of the land was SENÇOÞEN, which is known these days as Mount Newton. But our name for that is SENÇOԹEN. And that the top of SENÇOԹEN, there's giant arbutus trees right at the top. So our people paddled all their canoes towards SENÇOԹEN, towards the top, and they saw those giant arbutus trees. So they tied off one end of their giant ropes off to the giant arbutus trees, and they tied the other end off to their canoes. And still the water kept rising and rising, and the top of SENÇOԹEN disappeared, and they were left to watch the water rise while their ropes started to get smaller. You know, somehow they knew how long the roof should be, because just when they were at at what they call the end of their rope, the water stopped. The water stopped rising. And they stayed up there. They stayed up there in that water, watching all the water all around them and watching for signs. And stayed there for many, many days, I think maybe weeks, until a raven came flying across the water, and it had a branch in its mouth, a branch from the arbutus tree. And then they knew that the land was going to come back. The land was going to return to them. So they waited, and sure enough, the water started going down. And pretty soon they could see the Saanich Peninsula appearing out of the water. The Creator, came down to them and said, this is Saanich. This is Saanich, and it's the emerging land. That's what it means. Saanich, emerging land, and you are the Saanich people, the emerging people. You are the ones that emerged from the flood. So that now you are the Saanich people. So that's where Saanich came from. And that's actually where the name Saanich comes from. Because when the first settlers came here, they asked, what is the name of this place? And our people said Saanich. And you know, since they couldn't pronounce it, they called it Saanich. So that's how this Saanich here got its name, and that's how Saanich, that's how we became the Saanich people, the emerging people, because of the great flood and how we survived it. And we all know that we're all descendants of the people that survived the flood. So we are the Saanich people. So that is, I just wanted to let you know how that Saanich came to be and why we are known as the Saanich Nation. So I know it's something that isn't generally known amongst the public. And as much as I can as a hereditary chief, I feel it's my obligation to spread the word about who our people are and educate people as to who we are and why we're here. Thank you. I guess the other thing is where we've been having a lot of talks lately about Sidney Island and the little bay that's the first thing you go into when you go out to Sidney Island. We call it SENÇOFEN, Sidney Spit area. SENÇOFEN's all that area in there. And SENÇOFEN is a really important place for us. That whole of the remnants of one of our old villages there, all along that bank there. The remains of our ancestors are buried all along there. And one of the things that my grandfather and his brothers used to talk about all the time when they went out there was having to go in there, and it was a special place for them to get bracken fern. And they used bracken fern all of the time when they were doing the reef net fishery. preparing the salmon for whatever they needed to get done. They used the bracken fern to clean the salmon because the bracken fern has a special roughness to its texture, and they used to clean the outside of the salmon with that. But also they used the bracken fern in the pit cooks when they cook the salmon to give it that special flavor. And my grandfather's brother, his name was Philip Pelkey, was telling us one time he went out there, and he went. He left the family. They were camping along the waterfront, and he left the family to go down a trail that traversed the island. And he said he knew a special place where he could get the best bracken fern, and that he was going to go and look for it, and that he would come back to the family after he had enough for their needs. But he went off by himself down the island and started to pick the bracken fern. And I'm just looking for the name of my granduncle went along that trail from SENÇOÞEN inland, and while he was picking the bracken fern, he said when he turned to go back to the bay, a monster came out of the bush that was a great monster that had been troubling our people for many years. He said that it came out and it blocked the trail, and my granduncle said he was there with no weapons or nothing, and he was just a teenager at the time. And so he was left there defenseless against this monster that we called Steilacoom. It was called Steilacoom. And he said all he could do was throw the ferns at the Steilacoom, hoping that it would scare it. But he said when the ferns hit the Steilacoom, the scales that were on the side of the Steilacoom stood up like that, and then they went back down, and he picked more ferns and threw it again. And as soon as the ferns hit the Steilacoom again, the wherever they hit, the scale stood up like that. And he said he got so scared that he was going to die that he fainted. And when he woke up and all he could find was the ferns that he'd thrown at the Steilacoom. There was no Steilacoom there anymore. So he ran all the way back to the beach to the family, told them what had happened. So they they all packed up their things and left SENÇOFEN and went back to Tsawout. And so they knew that the Steilacoom was there on Sidney Island. But it wasn't only seen on Sidney Island. It was seen on Saanich Inlet by Sartlet Village, and it was seen out in Pender Island in the Pender Canal, where they think that it killed many of our people. Yeah, it was also seen over at Salt Spring, and there's markings out there of a Steilacoom on a big rock. So they think that maybe that might have been its home up there in the lake up there in Salt Spring Island. So that's just something that our granduncle Philip Pelkey told us about Sidney Island. And the family that actually, the last family that was living there on Sidney Island is the Josephs. And one elderly lady named Selena Joseph was the last person to live there, and her family is living here in Tsawout now. And I don't know if you know Toby Joseph, but he's a great grandson of Selena Joseph. So that's just something I wanted to share with you about Sidney Island. I'm not sure if all of you have heard of Pecals. Pecals is now known as Mount Doug, because of Mount Doug Park. And around 1852, our people had a fishing village in Cadbro Bay, and where they'd go and they'd live there during the fishing season. And not all of the families, but some of our families lived there. And they used to have trails between Cadbro Bay and that came out to Saanich and some of them went to Cordova Bay, some of them went to Tsawout, Sartlet, Sycom. So they had all these trails that went back and forth. And most of the trails were used by runners. And those runners were young men that were chosen because of their running skills to run back and forth between the villages to bring important messages back and forth. So in 1852, one of our young men was dispatched from Cadbro Bay to run and bring an important message back to Tsawout. He was told to bring this important message back and then bring back the response. So this young man was running from Cadbro Bay and coming by Mount Doug through the Gordon Head area. And along the trail, he came upon a wooden split rail fence, I guess they call it. A wooden fence that was erected along the trail, crossing it. And he was standing there looking at the fence, because he'd never seen such a thing ever built in the Saanich territory. And he was wondering what it was, and then he recalled that he was supposed to be bringing an important message to Tsawout. So he jumped over the fence and started to make his way across a field. And when he was making his way across the field, a farmer that had been watching him at the fence shot him and killed him. And the families that were still in Cadbro Bay heard the shot, because gunshots in those days were a pretty rare thing, and pretty louder than anything else they'd ever heard before. So they came running down the trail from Cadbro Bay and came to the fence, and then saw the young man laying in the field. So they jumped over the field and went to see him. And then they saw the farmer standing a ways away from them with his gun. And I guess he was expecting trouble, because he was holding the gun on them. But they just picked up the young man and carried him the rest of the way to Tsawout, and brought him to the chief's house in Tsawout, and explained to them what they'd found. That the young man they found was dead, and that he had something. They think that the farmer had killed him somehow. And so they, the chief, hearing that, called a meeting amongst all the chiefs of the Saanich Nation to come together. And at that time, our nation took in the Saanich Peninsula over to the Malahat, as far as the Cold Stream, and over to Salt Spring, and then out into the Gulf Islands, and then over into the SENÇOÞEN Alliance, and even as far down as Elwha. So all of the chiefs were summoned and came to this big meeting in Tsawout. And the chief of Tsawout explained to them what happened, that one of our young men had been killed for no reason, and that person was in that Gordon Head area. So the chiefs had their meeting, and they decided that it was now time to be rid of the Quinitums. That's what they called everyone that wasn't First Nations. They wasn't one of our people. They called them Quinitums. And Quinitum means just arrived. So that's what they called everyone, Quinitums. That wasn't one of our people. So they said they decided that it was time to be rid of the Quinitums, that they were a danger to our people. So there was a priest in those days living amongst our people. He was a missionary priest, and he'd been amongst the Saanich people for so long that he'd learned the SENÇOÞEN language, which is the language we speak, SENÇOԹEN. So he learned the SENÇOԹEN language from our people. And so the chief called him and told him to bring a message back to the chief of the Quinitums, that they wanted to meet with him up on Pelkey, which is one of our sacred mountains. So Pelkey is the border between the Saanich people and the Lekwungen people. And usually all of our important meetings between the Saanich and Lekwungen people took place on Pelkey. So they called a meeting to happen up in Pelkey, and called the chief of the Quinitums, which was Sir James Douglas in those days, their governor, called him to that meeting. And so Sir James Douglas, in February, I don't know, it's February 3rd or something, 1852, marched up Pacals with a battalion of his men, maybe 40 or 50 men, all armed, marched them up to Pacals and to meet with the chiefs of Saanich Nation. But unbeknownst to them, the Saanich chiefs had informed the warriors of the Saanich Nation to surround Pacals, and that when they were going to give them the signal, they were going to attack the Quinitums and kill them all. And then they were going to go down to what was known as Fort Victoria at that time and kill all the people that were there. So they got up to the mountain there, and all of the chiefs were on one side, and Sir James Douglas and his battalion were on the other side. And the warriors were sitting up in the brush waiting for the signal. So before the chief could give a signal, the missionary priest came out from behind Sir James Douglas, and he was carrying a 3-foot crucifix or cross that he'd made, a 3-foot cross in front of him, and he was walking forward towards the chiefs with it. And he was telling them that not to kill the Quinitums, not to spare them. He said the Quinitums are a spiritual people just like you. They believe in the Creator, and they can't be evil if they believe in the Creator. And the chief, seeing that what he was carrying, and thought that it somehow reminded them of the totem poles that our people constructed for ourselves, and they thought that there must be some spirituality in it. So they, after hearing what the priest said, they went back and had another meeting amongst themselves. Then came back and told the missionary priest to speak for them and tell Sir James Douglas that because they believe that they are a spiritual people and that somehow are a good people, that they would spare them, but there should be a peace treaty between them, a peace treaty that protected our land and protected our way of life, and that no killings of our people were to happen, and that our people were to be treated fairly. So these were the words that were given to Sir James Douglas by the missionary priest from the Saanich chiefs. So that's how the Douglas Treaty came to be in 1852, because of those incidents. And this was told to me up on Pacals one day when we were fighting to bring back the name of Pacals. One of our elders took me up there and told me why Pacals was so important to us, and that they supported the fight to reinstate the name. So I was lucky to hear this right from one of our elders, because it was passed down from generation to generation, so that our people would know why there's a treaty and why Pacals is such a big part of that treaty. Well, I'm not sure if any of you have any questions.